Are atheists angry at God? No, since we don't believe in gods at all. We're just mad at the con men that use God to make money and screw over the innocent, which I figure we're going to see more of today. I don't think any of these apologists could be honest if their lives depended on it. How about you? We're back with Brian Holdsworth and his Why Are Atheists Angry at God? When atheists don't even believe in your silly imaginary friend to begin with. This whole thing gets really silly when you start to look at it, but this is religion, and religion is all about making the existing believers happy, even if you have to spew endless amounts of bullshit to get there. These are people making excuses for their own failures, and it's fun, at least every once in a while, to point it all out, even if it'll never change their minds because they're not using them in the first place. So let's get back to that, already in progress.
And of course, this standard of skepticism, which I would claim is unreasonable, can be applied to anything.
I don't think there's anything too extreme. I mean, sure, the stupid Jordan Peterson, what do you mean by is stupidity, is just an attempt to distract, but I figure it's a good thing to ask all those serious questions, and sadly, the religious don't have any intelligent answers. That's why I reject faith out of hand, and by faith, I mean the Hebrews 11:1 version, where it's all just wishful thinking and empty beliefs because you want to feel good. If you have no evidence to back yourself up, then I have no reason to believe anything that you say. I also have no reason to believe anything in the Bible if it cannot be independently corroborated with actual demonstrable evidence. It doesn't matter what you really want to be true, it matters what demonstrably is. Maybe try that, because this faith stuff, it just isn't working.
If I hate the idea that the earth is round and the possibility of it being round agitates me to the point of anger and contempt for those who disagree with me, then any evidence, even evidence that I experience firsthand in support of this claim, is something that I could just chalk up to the failures of my own faculties of perception. Like my eyes and my brain are simply deceiving me.
And he just accurately described most flat earthers. They don't want the earth to be a sphere, mostly because they are religious lunatics. Like Brian Holdsworth. But what he's not describing here are atheists, or at least he's not describing me, since I don't get to answer for anyone else. I don't not want there to be a God. I just want to know the truth, and the only methodology that we have for coming to actual truth, to actual fact, at least at the moment, it doesn't show that his God is real. It doesn't show that any gods are real. The failure here is his, or more properly, on the side of the religious. I mean, he doesn't bear all the responsibility to back up the beliefs of all theists or all Catholics or whatever else. He has to back up what he says, and he can't do it. His side has not shown that any of the things that they believe on faith are actually true, and they don't care. They've shown this over and over and over again. They have an entire double standard when it comes to their religious beliefs, something that they would never apply to anything else in their lives. But when it comes to God, all that changes. His entire video is claiming that atheists are mad at God. Well, we don't believe your God is real in the first place. How can we be mad at something that we don't think exists? Maybe you should figure that out first, but he can't, because then he'd have to face the uncomfortable reality that we reject his claims for cause. He's got nothing. He just doesn't want to talk about that, does he?
And if I did that, wouldn't that be evidence of my own irrationality on this subject?
No, Your irrationality is refusing to acknowledge that your God beliefs aren't special. God doesn't get a get out of critical evaluation free card. You have to use the exact same methods, the exact same standards that we use for everything else in reality, and you simply can't. That's why he and other apologists make so many videos about why atheists don't believe, but they always get it wrong. They don't care why we actually don't believe. They're only looking for comforting lies that they can tell each other so they feel a whole lot better about their own delusions. This is just, hey, look over there, because it distracts people from noticing just how empty Christianity and other religions actually are. If they had any actual evidence, stuff they could point to, and other people could study it without having to believe their side of it first, then they never have to resort to any of this. This is desperation, nothing more. And that's kind of sad, isn't it?
Yes, it would. Which is why atheists who demonstrate such animosity towards theism and who refuse to allow any evidence to be presented to them should be treated in the same way.
Except you have no evidence. This is just asserting stuff without actually demonstrating stuff. Go ahead and present actual evidence. Go for it. Because they don't have any evidence to present. That's why the second that you say that, they go for philosophical arguments. Philosophical arguments are worthless in demonstrating anything actually real. Concepts in your head, sure, but something that exists in and interacts with the real world, totally useless. When we say evidence, we mean something that demonstrably links to something verifiably real. Not something you made up in your head, not something that makes you feel really good, something that you can show actually exists. And the religious have none of that at all, do they? In fact, they have defined their God specifically so that they cannot have any evidence. Why? Because they know there's nothing there. If you tell me there's a ghost, I'm going to expect you to show me that ghost. Don't make up a bunch of stories. Don't tell me that people have seen it. Don't pull out nonsensical devices that you claim detect ghosts. Trot that ghost out there for me to see. And if you can't do that, I'm not going to believe that ghost is there. I don't have double standards like you do. You need them. I don't. You have a specific goal in mind. I don't. I only want to know the reality to the best of my ability to discover it. We are not after the same thing, and that's your problem, not mine.
These are not rational people offering reasonable degrees of skepticism. These are people motivated by emotions and personal animus, and to whatever degree that they invoke their rational faculties, it's at the service of their emotions and prejudices rather than the other way around.
No, that's you. You are just looking in the mirror and mistaking what you see. You have come to your beliefs entirely emotionally, and you can prove that by just talking to any theist anywhere. It doesn't matter what religion, because they're all doing effectively the same thing. Where is your evidence? Just watch the excuses come flying. Well, it just seems to me. That's not impressive. That's not evidence, but it is all that they have. It's why, if you notice, a lot of apologists will talk about common sense and not facts and evidence. Well, it just seems to me. That doesn't mean anything. Hell, there is a fallacy called the fallacy from common sense. Common sense means absolutely nothing. Your emotional comfort means absolutely nothing. You mean absolutely nothing. We're not after your fifis and your blind faith. We're after the demonstrable facts. And the facts are things that you have to be able to demonstrate. We care about the things that would exist had you never existed at all, had Christianity never existed at all, had humanity never existed at all. They aren't after that in the least. This is just emotional pandering by dumb people who are only after their own personal emotional comfort. And that's just childish. All he's doing here is rationalizing so he feels better in the end, and that means nothing. It's just painfully dumb.
What I think is going on with a lot of the people who rail against the existence of God and anyone who supports that claim is described by C.S. Lewis in his autobiography, recounting the inconsistency of mind and heart that he suffered with when he was an atheist.
Fuck C.S. Lewis. He's another one of those mindless whiners who only cared about emotion and wouldn't know a fact if it bit him in the ass. I don't care about anyone's feelings. I care what evidence you can present for your proposition, the thing that demonstrates that this thing you're claiming is actually true, and you people aren't even trying. So they tell these comforting stories to each other, explaining why everyone isn't just like they are, when obviously people aren't like you are because you're a moron. Come back when you have that kind of evidence, the kind that we're actually asking for, because until then, you're just making a fool of yourself. It honestly shouldn't be that hard if your imaginary friend in the sky is actually real. Don't make excuses, which is all he's doing right now, which is why his comments are full of people calling him out on it. And of course, he doesn't respond to anybody in his comments either. Most theists don't, whereas I respond to just about everybody in my own comments. Why? Because I'm not afraid. When the religious show up in the comments, I respond to them just like I do everyone else. I'm not afraid of them. In fact, half the time I'm laughing at them because they're the ones making complete fools of themselves. I'm not the one running away. It's them. Granted, it's a little hard for me to run away from my own comment section, but I still answer, and most apologists out there, they don't. They cherry pick. They will talk to the people on their own side or the softball questions that they occasionally get from the non-religious, but the really, really hard questions, the ones that might make them take a step back from their belief and say, what's the actual answer? They don't do that. Never, ever, ever. Because they don't want that. They just really want to believe.
He says this: I was at this time living like so many atheists or anti-theists in a whirl of contradiction. I maintained that God did not exist. I was also very angry with God for not existing. I was equally angry with him for creating a world.
Which no atheist worth their salt would ever say. Now, I know Lewis was a Christian at the time, but this is why I don't believe the claims of a lot of theists who say they used to be an atheist. They don't talk like they understand any of it. An atheist who does not believe any gods are real would not be angry at a god for not existing. How idiotic is that? That's why these videos of atheists who are just mad at God are just so absurd. We don't believe your gods, or any gods at all, are actually real. How can you be angry at something that you do not believe exists? Are you mad at Darth Vader or Sauron? That would be just stupid, and that's why idiots like J. Warner Wallace get completely discredited, because they just lie about things. It turns out that just about everything J. Warner Wallace ever said about being an atheist and being a big shot cold case detective was just untrue. He's been debunked. But that won't stop a lot of mindless Christians from following him anyhow, will it? They don't care about the truth any more than he does. That's the problem. If a famous scientist was revealed to be a liar who misrepresented their background and falsified their results, nobody would ever respect them again. Yet religious apologists come back time and time and time again after being completely discredited. Look at Jim Bakker and Jimmy Swaggart and the like, who get caught with their hands in the cookie jar, sometimes go to prison, and then idiot theists flock back to them over and over again because they still have a comforting message. These people are really dumb. But what the hell else is new, right?
And that's reminiscent for me of another quote by G.K. Chesterton when he said, "The worst moment for an atheist is when he's really thankful and has no one to thank."
Except I do. I thank real people, not imaginary friends. The problem here, I think, is that the religious are desperate to be thankful because they don't understand their place in actual reality. They're just animals and they don't like it. They're biological life forms that exist in an uncaring universe. They are really emotionally uncomfortable at the actual facts, so they just make up an imaginary happy land in their heads where they can be orgasmically happy all the time. I don't feel the need to be thankful for the sun for shining down on my head and potentially giving me skin cancer and stuff like that. It's just a thing that exists. It doesn't need my thanks, and it doesn't have the capacity to accept it regardless. I don't have to be thankful for the trees or the sky or anything like that. It's just the natural world that doesn't care if I'm thankful or not. It just is. If there are actual people that do nice things for me, I am thankful to them, and I express my thanks to them. You don't need to be thankful to inanimate objects, because that's kind of stupid, right?
And that's true enough, but the reverse, I think, is also true for a lot of atheists, in which they find themselves outraged about some perceived injustice in the world, but have no one to direct their complaint to.
I don't do that. If there is injustice, there is a cause. If there is no cause, then it's not injustice, is it? It's just shit that happens. I think that's something that the religious have a real problem with, though. They don't like that stuff just happens that's entirely beyond anyone's control. They don't want to live in actual reality. They want someone to credit and someone to blame, and that's just not how any of it works, is it? If there's an earthquake, it doesn't mean somebody's mad at me. It means plate tectonics is a thing. I don't have to grovel before an imaginary god and say I'm sorry. It just happens. There it is. I'm not to blame, and neither is anyone else. I wish the religious could get that through their heads, but they really can't, can they? If something good happens, it happens. It's a really nice day outside right now. It's not 115 degrees like it has been all summer. It's too bad I'm stuck inside, but I can look out the window and acknowledge that it's a really nice day. I don't have to thank anybody for it. It's just a product of axial tilt. In another couple of months, it's going to be freezing cold out there, probably snowing, things like that. And I don't get mad at that either. I don't have to blame anybody. I just accept reality as it is. And I wish the religious could do the same.
As a Christian, I believe that God cares about my prayers, and so there have been times when I've complained to him.
And how'd that work out for you? Did anything change in any demonstrable way as a result of your bitch session? Or is this just something you did to feel better, even though it was a complete waste of time? Now, I know he doesn't agree with that, but this is all being done for emotional comfort, not demonstrable fact. It's why theists have to make up so many excuses for why prayer demonstrably doesn't work. It's not God's will. God isn't saying no, he's saying not yet. Well, if God is only going to do what's in his will, then your prayers don't mean anything at all, do they? God is going to do what God is going to do. Screw you. So why are you wasting your time on this prayer shit again? That's a good question to ask. Not that they have any decent answers. Why are you wasting your time praying? Don't you think God already knows what you're going to ask for? God isn't going to change his plan for you, so what the hell is the point? God knows what you're going to say, and God doesn't care. But I guess we can't expect any realistic takes from these lunatics, can we?
I've raised my objection, and I also firmly believe that he honors those moments. He doesn't just rebuke me or smite me for it. He receives those strained expressions and interacts with them and leads me towards some kind of understanding about it.
But your own theology says otherwise. You might really like the idea that your imaginary friend cares, but God is going to do what God is going to do, and there's no reason to think whatsoever that your God exists in the first place, so why bother? Now, I don't personally care if you do. I mean, talk to yourself all you want, but making videos on YouTube about talking to yourself and being delusional, that's not going to gain you any credibility among people who don't think your silly father figure in the sky is real in the first place. But then again, you're not making these videos for us, are you? You're only making them for other delusional idiots who couldn't care less about reality. This is why we have so many problems with these videos, because they're not intended to make people think. They're intended to stop them from doing so. Just keep believing because it makes you feel good. Don't ask any questions. We'll just keep making fun of the other side because they're not just like we are. You know, deluded out of our gourds. And that's why I don't care about as a Christian. Try living in the real world for once. Saying as a Christian or from a Christian perspective, that doesn't get you out of reality free. And a lot of these people are pulling this, if you notice. There's a lot of people, a lot of videos, and you don't even realize it until you recognize what's going on. But there's a lot of people who go, from a Christian worldview, and then they spew a whole bunch of ridiculous bullshit that makes no sense whatsoever, and they just assume it's true because it comes from their worldview. But that's not reality. Fuck your worldview. Your worldview means nothing if it is not in concordance with actual reality. This all just makes you look stupid. Maybe you might want to do something about that.
But the atheist in the clip that I saw is distressed by historical events like the Holocaust and the seemingly arbitrary suffering of innocent people and children.
I don't know about you, but I'm not. I mean, had I been around at the time, sure. But I would have had someone to blame for all that. You know, Hitler, the guy who was on your side. But for natural disasters, I'm not upset at nature for that. Nature has no capacity to do differently. It just is what it is. Shit happens. There's no point in getting mad at shit because we can't do anything about shit anyhow. This is why coming to grips with reality is so important. If there is a hurricane, say, all we can do is try to prepare for it, since we can usually see them coming and we know where they tend to hit, and then we just pick up the pieces afterwards. We, as humans, choose to live in those areas, right? If there's anyone to blame, it's us. It's stupid to yell at the sky. The sky isn't listening. This is why people need to grow up and learn to deal. It's honestly not that hard.
Well and good, so am I. But my objections make sense in light of the fact that I believe in God who exists.
No, they don't. Just because you believe a thing, that doesn't make that thing true. It would only be rational and make sense if you could demonstrate that your imaginary friend was real. What you're saying is no different than someone who says, well, I believe in magical hurricane-causing leprechauns. Okay, you're an idiot. There is no way to justify that belief in reality. Just because you believe it doesn't mean anything. You are just being dumb. It means you're out of your ever-loving mind. Again, I'm a Christian doesn't mean anything if Christianity isn't actually true, and since you have no means whatsoever to prove that it is, you're no better off than that stupid leprechaun believer. Just because it makes you feel good doesn't mean it's real. You people really need to rent a clue.
If you don't believe there is anything more than matter and motion or the physical universe, on what grounds do you have to say that the world and the events captured in time should have been another way, which is what we're doing when we make moral objections?
Moral objections only matter for thinking agents. I don't get mad at nature because nature doesn't do what I want. That's just stupid. Nature has no capacity to reason or change course. It just is what it is. For other thinking agents, though, we can do that because there is a reasonable expectation that people can and should follow the rules laid out by society. If they don't, there are consequences. We can hold people accountable. We can't hold nature accountable, and you'd have to have some pretty serious mental problems if you think that you can. What are you going to do? Put that tree in jail for dropping a branch on somebody? That's dumb. Granted, the religious just invent imaginary friends in the sky as a means to hold nature accountable in some fashion, and then they have to come up with all kinds of excuses when it doesn't play out the way that they want. Nature still doesn't care what you invent. Nature doesn't have the capacity to care. You live in a world that doesn't give a damn about you. Deal with it. But these people lack the maturity to do so, which is why we get the endless religious stupidity that we do. This is never going to change, Brian. It's time to grow the hell up and deal with the actual reality that you live in. Give it a shot.
To say that things should be other than they are is to accuse the physical universe of being other than what it should be.
But we don't do that, or at least I don't do that, because it's just stupid. There's no should be. There is only is. If there's an earthquake tomorrow and it knocks my house over, that's how it is. Maybe I shouldn't have lived where I do. Maybe my house should have been built stronger. I don't know. I don't have control over nature, and neither do you. Neither does anyone to any real degree. Half of human existence has been trying to deal with nature on its own terms because we don't have a choice. It just is what it is. Then you get idiots like Brian who make up imaginary friends to complain to because they can't handle living in the real world. The problem here is them. It's not us, it's them. It's always been them, and it will always be them. They have not grown up and learned how to deal with the real world. They just want to remain permanent children looking up to their parents to protect them now and forever. And that's not how that works, because your parents can't change reality either. You have to learn to deal, and these people are just too stupid to handle it. This is where they always go wrong, but they don't care because they think wishful thinking and delusion will save them, and it never ever does. That's why they have so many excuses for why things didn't go their way. And that's kind of stupid, isn't it? No, it's really stupid, but then again, look who we're talking about. Anyhow, we'll be back to finish this up next week. It's not remotely impressive, at least in my opinion. It's just Brian Holdsworth proving why he's such a ludicrous laughingstock, as if that's any real surprise. It never is, and it never has been, and sadly it never will be. This is what religious stupidity looks like, and it's nothing to be proud of at all.